Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to our webinar on Makena, an area that is of great importance to the people of Maui. My name is Dick Mayer, and I will be your MC for this webinar. I formerly taught at Maui Community College and have been involved in Maui land issues for several decades. As most of you know, Makena is a large area of South Maui. Its major landowner is Makena Resort, with approximately 1,750 acres. About 3 years ago, the resort owners applied to the Maui Planning Commission for a special management area permit, sometimes known as an SMA permit. A number of civic groups and individuals were concerned that this SMA project on 47 acres just above Makena Landing would have some undesired impacts. The original proposal was to place numerous 4- and 6-story condominiums, about 10 of them, on the land, plus a large number of residential lots, for a total of about 134 units on this 47-acre parcel, and also a commercial area as well. Negotiations went on between the resort owners and these groups and individuals, with the result that in 2018 a settlement agreement was reached. That settlement agreement covered not only the 47 acres, but also the entire Makena Resort area. One of the provisions of the settlement agreement was that archaeological work would be done to the 47-acre property before final plans and construction would begin. That archaeological work has been ongoing and is the subject of this evening's presentation webinar. We will hear from a representative of Makena Resort. Hopefully we got his video. Before the broadcast, we hadn't yet arrived, but hopefully we'll have that. The archaeologist who's been working on the archaeology of that 47 acres, and a number of residents who have special interests in the Makena area. This evening's webinar will follow the following format. We will first hear a video made by Kaimi Judd from the company, who will describe the Makena Resort perspective. That will be followed by Tanya Lee Krieg, who has been working on the site as an archaeologist and will be reporting on the many discoveries that have been made on the northern portion of the 47 acres site. Thereafter, we will have a question session to not only Tanya, but several members of our community who are both lineal descendants of that area or have been involved in one way or another. They will be introduced later. I urge those of you listening, and this is important for most of you, I urge those of you listening to this webinar to post your questions on the Facebook page. We will try to answer them during the second half of this evening's webinar. So now, without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Kaimi. Did we get that video? Let me ask Rob. Did we get the video, Rob?
Tanya has the video, and
okay.
She thinks that she can send it.
Okay, Tanya, if you could share that, that would be terrific.
Yeah, it's actually quite large. It's 600 megs. Would it be okay if I just shared my screen with?
Yes, please do.
The video.
Let's see how long it goes. It may just have a lot of detailed maps.
Okay. All right. So I am going to share my screen.
Kaimi is the vice president of Makena Golf and Beach Club.
Yeah.
And he was unable to come. He wanted to come, but he's unable to be here tonight. So he's sent this video instead.
Oh, shucks. Sorry. Of course, I'm having technical difficulties.
Well, we always.
I'm so sorry.
We're all learning Zoom.
Let's see if I can't just play it.
Did it just a second ago.
Would it be, Rob? Would it be at all possible to switch around the agenda? I'm so sorry. I think it would be more beneficial for it to go to you I don't have
Do you know how to set?
speakers on my computer.
Okay.
Can
Why
you
don't we
send
do
it? 600 megs is a lot to send to Rob.
Yeah. Trying to see if I can. Oh my gosh. I know what I'm gonna do.
Dick, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, I can.
You should mention that Kaimi and Makena Resort and Beach Club are going to actually do a part 2 where he'll be present too and speak a
Yes,
little.
I was going to mention that at the end, but good time now. Yes, this is only part 1. We're hoping in about 4 weeks to have a second webinar where we'll have people live from the company itself answering questions, talking about the project, and giving the public much more information on what's going on. But this, I think, should whet our appetites to the activities that are going on and have been going on historically, and then look into the future as well, what may be going on.
And I might mention that that will be followed by an on-site visit for the public as well, probably in late January or early February, conditions permitting. But the archaeological finds are impressive, and the public probably could understand more, like seeing things firsthand sometimes in a way about what is planned.
Very good. And how will that be announced, Lucienne?
My understanding is that it would be a joint announcement among the parties and Makena Resort, and it would be publicized online as well as in the newspapers and so forth, so that those who are interested could participate.
Okay. Do you anticipate that happening just before or just after the 4 weeks from now, second seminar?
I think it would be after. I think that the seminar would be a chance for people to, get their questions answered, and then there'd be an on-site visit where folks could actually look at things live and ask more questions too, because
Excellent.
different, like standing on land than looking at pictures,
Very
so.
good.
Anyway, I think the general idea for those who are viewing at home is that no one's heard anything about this project for a number of years. And now, but yet there's been a lot of work done, but it's the kind of work that, doesn't make headlines. It's just quiet, patient work. So now it's time to start talking about, what the current update is.
Okay. Now let's see if we get some voice. Turn up the volume.
I can't make it tonight. I had previously scheduled a family commitment, and it's just a small example of how we're all juggling the blurring of work and family life. We're living through quite a time globally and locally. There's no shortness of opportunity to see differences, whether the issue is the upheaval in the election, perhaps a loved one who voted differently than you, the different how people are choosing to social distance, differences in how we juggle Zoom fatigue and Zoom school, and difference in opinion regarding tourism in Hawaii, masks, vaccines. Most recently, late last night, watching my wife, who's worked so hard to be a meteorologist, mom, Austin partner, covering the amazing return of Pele to Halimo'o. It's extremely exciting for some. I know it is for me culturally and as a Kona boy. While I can understand that for others it could be a cause for concern. My intent of pointing out these differences is not to judge what is right or wrong, but to share our iterative process for navigating tougher issues in Makena and the ways the public process and our internal process invites conversation. Many of these differences, wherever you stand on these big and small issues, sometimes elicit a combative response rather than create the space for conversation. For some, the pain and suffering are just too much to be in conversation. That is understandable. For those who are open to it, we will continue to make space for these conversations through a commitment to the public process. An example of which you will see in Tanya's following presentation. We may or may not agree on a development plan for these lands. That may be one of our differences during this meeting, but I want to be clear that we are committed to listening and to understanding, which guides the evolution of our project plans, which relates specifically to the topic of this meeting, which is Tanya and her team's great archaeological work. Since I began here over 7 years ago, we knew from the very start the importance of recognizing and elevating not just Hawaii-based expertise, but Makena-based expertise, those who know Makena best. We formed a community advisory group and a cultural focus group comprised of those who maintained responsibility and accountability to the lifeways of Makena. As descendants and longtime residents, their lives are attuned to all the cycles that occur in Makena: growing cycles, spawning cycles, flashy rains. This group has also been involved in Makena archaeology for decades. Like any group passionate about the subject matter, our meetings with these groups at times produce heated conversations. They hold our feet to the fire. But the commonality amongst the cultural focus group is that they have shown up to care for Makena since Cebu and before. Not just when a new project shows up, but always tending to Makena. They're the wash the dishes after the party is done type of folks. They, like this audience, consider archaeology, culture, and history vital to Makena, and they want to make sure Makena's history is told not from hearsay, but from what has been passed down to them in place, what they have observed over decades in place, and what they have been accountable to and responsible for in this place. For some of our cultural focus group, their expertise and knowledge is in fishing. For some, it's how the waters have flowed down from Mauka to Makai over time. For some, it's all the names of the families who've come and gone in Makena over time. For some, it's the archaeological work that they've been a part of for decades. Each has their own expertise in Makena, and this place-based expertise is all being supported by Tanya's expert archaeology work. So that's the framework of our internal process. Makena-based experts with tremendous unbroken knowledge supported by expert scientists. They consistently continue to pour their aloha into Makena, and we stand in awe at the exchange, the sacrifice, the responsibility, the accountability. They show up when it's good and when it's rough. They continue to maintain the relationship with this place no matter the season, and we are grateful for that commitment. It's because so many people care about Makena that we are here. It's because many have cared about Makena over time that settlement agreements have happened during Cebu with Hui Alanui o Makena, and more recently with Ho'oponopono o Makena, Maui Tomorrow, and Sierra Club. And while we inherited previous owners' archaeology when we began our story with Makena, today we get to implement a new process with an archaeologist like Tanya. The settlement agreements provide an opportunity for us to commit to the natural and cultural resources in ways that the Cultural Focus Group and Community Advisory Group have always advocated for, and are matters of importance shared by those here who are showing up out of care and aloha. That is something important to us that we share with you all. I know I've been contemplating these last few months what the new normal will be. For us, the new normal maintains the importance of the public process. As it relates to archaeology, Tanya will describe where public has engaged and can continue to engage in the archaeological review process. We will continue to elevate Makena-based expertise as integral, along with the support of expert scientists to guide the way. A robust commitment to the public process will help the project continue to unfold in a way that keeps primary space at the table for those who have attended to Makena's lifeways, all of its wonderful natural and cultural resources. And there's no better combination of Makena-based knowledge, expertise, and care with the finest scientific archaeological mind than Tanya Lee Gray. The development plans continue to evolve because of the work of the Makena-based experts, Tanya's good work, and the public process. So thank you, mahalo, for allowing me the space to keep my commitment to my family and share a bit with all of you here. I wish all of you and your loved ones well, and now I will toss it to the expert, Tanya Lee Gray.
Wonderful, wonderful introduction. Tanya, I'm going to ask you to turn on your mic.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. And it's a little bit louder, so I'll have to turn down our volume probably. Okay.
I don't know if I can live up to that introduction, but I will try.
Yeah. Why don't you, Tanya? Why don't you introduce yourself? Give a little bit of your background first, then launch into your program.
Sure. So my name is Tanya.
Yeah, turn on your video. Turn on your video. There you go.
There we go. Aloha.
Hello.
My name is Tanya Lee Gregg. I am an archaeologist here on Maui, and my company, Aina Archeology, is currently carrying out the archaeological investigations or additional archaeological investigations in the Makena area. My connectivity to Makena extends into my ohana. Both of my grandparents were from Honua'ula. My grandfather, Ulupalakua, my grandmother grew up at Kanahena. And so for many summers, I would find myself at grandma's house, going back and forth between Kahului and Makena. So I'm quite familiar with, especially this region, as our Kuleana lot is located just on the Kiavala east side of Makena Bay and Makena Landing. You'll hear more about that. My uncle Ashford, who is in the leadership of Ho'oponopono o Makena, is also with us today. So my connectivity to this Aina is through my mother's and my uncle's line in Makena. Just a brief background about my archaeological mo'oku auhau. I went away to school in Colorado. I was able to come back and was blessed to be able to work in Kahiki Nui with Boyd Dixon and Ka'ohana'o Kahiki Nui as they were beginning to settle the land out there as a part of my internship. So my journey home to Hawaii and Maui in particular, because I always told my grandma I'm going to live on Maui no matter what, because I grew up on Oahu. My journey home began in Kahiki Nui, and Kaho'olawe actually brought me home. So I did many years on Kaho'olawe, working the archaeological aspects of the ordnance clearance, and finally coming full circle to be able to do archaeology here in Makena. So with that, I will turn to Honua'ula Kua La'ola'o.
Okay, we can see it now.
So Honua'ula Kua La'ola'o is some may be familiar with this olelo no iao, and it refers to the callous back of Honua'ula, and it's said of the people of Honua'ula Maui who were hard workers. The kauna of this olelo no iao refers to the recognition that the people of Honua'ula were exceptionally hard workers, as the loads that they would carry often caused calluses on their back. So Auntie Kavena Pukui shares this with us. And this is very evident in the archaeological record of this region of Ka'eo and Papa'anui, because it speaks to the industrious people of Honuo'ula as reflected in the agricultural landscape, the traditional agricultural landscape of the region that early archaeologists collectively referred to as the Makena field system. For this presentation, I'll just be taking very broadly through cultural background and historical, the historical mo'olelo of this region, and then go into the archaeological findings that we were able to document. Next.
There we go.
So just as a background, from the written historical narrative, we know that Honuo'ula is a land of plenty and also can be a land of famine. You know, the sweet potato is the food there, and the taro, but they are foods that do not last. According to a newspaper article translated by Kipal Mali, the following article stated, here are the foods which are always available at Honuo'ula. Sugarcane, tea leaf roots, and the budding leaves of the tea are the steady foods. The people live in two places of residency, along the shoreline and in the mid-uplands of the land. The people who live on the shore must travel a great distance to get vegetable foods, but the fresh water is close to them. They are blessed to be near the drinking water and fish. The people who reside in the middle of the land are fortunate that their foods are close to them, but they have a great distance to go for fresh water unless it is in the caves. If they travel to the uplands to get water, it is a great ascent for the distance of the trip and only for 2 large water containers in which to pour the water and return. That is all that they could carry. The water gourds hang down and there is little that remains for bathing and moistening the volke. So we know from some of this mo'olelo that it is indeed true that the people of Honuo'ula were industrious. They are able to survive in such a space through this fortitude of character that allowed them or guided them to be able to understand their landscape, the kupuna understanding our landscape, and being able to thrive in a landscape such as this.
Could you go back to that map and show us where you're going to be looking at, or are you going to come back to it later?
I'll come back to it later, but
Okay,
I can begin as well. So I can point this out as well. So for our public, let's see. These are the overall, in yellow, are the overall areas that we will be looking at as a part of our additional investigation into archaeological work. The archaeological findings that I'll be sharing tonight are outlined in this red area. We currently have crews in the southern sections, and the findings there are equally impressive.
Why don't you point out where the Makena landing is, where the hotel is, just to give people a sense of where things are located.
Okay, so Makena Landing, the Makena Landing Park, I should say, is here. Can you see this blue arrow?
Right.
Okay. The location of the hotel is here, in this area right here.
Which is no longer there.
Which is no longer there. So that is the area of the hotel. So the underlying aerial is actually fairly recent. And again, Makena Landing here. Pu'uola'i is here. And Big Beach is to the south. So north is to the top of this screen. And then what everyone knows, the area that everyone knows as Chang's Beach or Po'olanalana is here. Okay.
Thank you.
And if we look Mauka, which is very important for connectivity. We have Ulupalakua in here. Okay.
Thank you.
So we know that while on the coast, the residents of the Makena area would subsist primarily on fishing, the fishing grounds of the shores, the offshore waters of Makena in between Molokini, and even Molokini and Kaho'olawe are very, very rich in resources. But they would subsist primarily on fishing and various vegetable foods that were cultivated in soil, placed in the pockets of lava and nurtured by the rain. And this is a very important observation made by Handy, early ethnographers in the region. Because of the rocky nature of the landscape, the wisdom of the kupuna to be able to utilize this landscape and be successful at agricultural pursuits in this landscape was very impressive. So when the vegetables matured, such as Hawaiian watermelon, ipu, olo, historically pumpkin, sweet potatoes, dryland kalo, they were consumed. And after a period of about 6 months, when the climate became too dry, it was recorded that traditionally the families would make a journey back toward the uplands. Where the potatoes were planted were in the crumbling lava areas combined with nutrients and humus. And the soil is softened and heaped in little pockets and patches, utilizing favorable spots on the slopes. And this will become important as we look forward and understand our archaeological landscape. The importance of sweet potato to this area was also noted during the surveys of the Mahele Aina. Edie Baldwin, who was a surveyor at the time of the Mahele and was tasked with not only surveying the boundaries of the various aupua'a as well as the land grants and the kuleana, he would interact quite frequently with the kama'aina to the area because they knew the land the best. In his time as a surveyor, he remarked that early surveyors would say, oh, the corner of this kuleana is marked by a pile of stones. And Edie Baldwin, in a letter to Dawizi Alexander, told him that a marked rock or pile of stones would be very difficult to find or recognize in such a country as Honua'ula. The Mahoe Grants, for instance, has nearly every corner marked by a pile of rock. But I have given up all hopes of finding any of them, as the whole country of Makena was once used for raising sweet potato and is full of piles of stones. So even historically, we knew that the agricultural landscape was very well suited for sweet potato agriculture. So along with Mahi'ai traditions, we have Lava'i'a traditions, and at Makena, Hukila was also a common fishing practice. And this speaks to the communal nature and the Ohana families of this region to come together along the shorelines at Makena landing area, especially to be able to do these large communal akule surrounds, a method that required the whole family, if not the whole village, and others from up Mauka to come down and help to pull in the large schools of akule. In this slide, we have, this is my great-grandfather, Kaue Kane Kukahiko. He was a renowned fisherman of the area. And this photo to the right is believed to be the beach side at Makena Landing, just showing that through history and through time, fishing and the relationship of this region to fishing has been of utmost importance. In an interview with Kepa Mali, the very awesome ethnographer, Samuel Chang described how his tutu would watch for school of akule from the shoreline and direct the fishermen to surround the fish with nets. while others gathered on the beach to be able to huki or pull the lau or the net from the beach, right? So along with not only the pulling of the nets into the shoreline, of utmost importance were those who could kilo or be able to spot the fish within the waters, these large schools of fish. So all of it was sort of this wonderful dance of tradition linked to fishing and resources and being able to bring in what was needed for ohana. Along with hukilau and shoreline fishing, the fishing grounds have always been noted. So the fishing grounds for Papa'anui, which is where our project or the area that we're speaking to today is located. I'm going to, so again, here is the area that we will be discussing in depth about the archaeology. When the subject of fisheries and which fisheries belong to which aupua'a, because we know that the aupua'a boundaries did not stop on the land. They extended out into the sea. And E.D. Baldwin and Alexander in their correspondence also record that the people of Papa'anui told him once that the fishing rights of Ka'eo extended past Papa'anui, and that Molokini was the fishery of Papa'anui. So here we see in this image the connectivity of Molokini to both Pu'ola'i and as an important resource as well for Papa'anui and Papa'anui's relationship with Molokini. So along with agriculture, fishing, the importance of ceremony and tradition, as reflected in Heiau and Ko'a, were paramount to traditional Hawaiian lifeways. Early archaeologists made the observation that major site complexes in Heiau distribution, when shown where the proper ahupua'a boundary delineations were, it shows that all were consolidated into a single land section during the mahele, or Keauhou, Kalihi, Waipau, and Papa'anui were all consolidated into a single land section during the mahele. But when we look at the archaeology or the footprint of our kupuna and the relationship of heiau structures and ko'a structures to agricultural areas and house sites, we understand that these all integrate into where the proper boundaries would have lain. At Papa'anui, we have Pohaku Nahaha Heiau. At Ka'eo, we have Kalani Heiau. And in and amongst and surrounding these heiau, we have these integrated coastal settlements, because all of it reflected and revolved around ceremony and tradition in our traditional lifeways.
What does the word ko'a mean?
So a ko'a is a shrine-like, is a shrine type of feature. It's a ceremonial feature, not as, it's a formal ceremonial feature, but not as large as a heiau. And oftentimes ko'a were for very specific things. So we have these shrine ko'a features dedicated to fishing, for instance. We have shrine types of features dedicated to agriculture, where the central stone would be a lono stone. So those are our smaller, more personalized, or personal, could be family would take care of these ko'a. And in contrast to the larger heiau that would be caretaken by a lihi. Okay. So into this traditional landscape, we have the arrival of Western vessels and 19th century culture change, right? So 1778, we see a big, a different type of influence and a big shift. We have the introduction of Christianity. We have the execution of the Mahele'aina, and we have a change in Honua'ula from a subsistence agricultural industry to a market-based commercial industry. And all of this happens rather rapidly. So let's turn to the development of Christianity at Honua'ula. So Christianity was first established at the Church of Wailuku in 1825, with missionary members beginning to create outstations across Maui. One of these outstations were at Honua'ula, and it began with a pili hale at a place called Keawakapu. So in this space, the area that we know as Keawala'i and the structure that we commonly associate with Keawala'i Church was once a pili hale, known historically as the Honua'ula Church. It also was later known as the Keawakapu Church or Ka'eo Church, and slowly became the central church for the Honua'ula region. And so in 1854,
let me ask one question. You use the word Honua'ula, and yet the whole presentation was supposed to be talking about Makena. What is the relationship between the word Makena and Honua'ula?
Okay. So Honua'ula is the moku. So the island, all islands are divided into moku as a larger district. Ahupua'a, in this sense, would be Papa'anui. So Honua'ula would be the moku or traditional district. Papa'anui would be the Ahupua'a. And Makena is Wahi Inoa. It's a place name.
Thank you.
For a general region.
Thank you.
My understanding. Okay. So here we have Keawala'i Church today, and the restoration of that, which involved the peeling back of the plaster that once formed the main structure of the church, and you can see the pohaku underneath, right? So these are a lot of the original pohaku that are kupuna pulled together. And so this narrative here comes from the history of Keawala'i Church, and translated, it talks about how the stone church came to be. And so in 1854, and I'm just going to read the translation. In 1854, the members gathered in the church that was covered with pili grass, and they decided to build a stone church in Ka'eo, Honua'ula, Maui. Ka'eo being the Ahupua'a, Honua'ula being the moku. And in that meeting, the members who lived oceanside decided that they would bring coral from the ocean to be used as plaster. And the members who lived mountainside decided that they were going to bring the wood to serve as firewood to heat up the coral. And it was accomplished. And when they got the coral that was gathered near the place where they were to build the stone church in the Ahupua'a of Ka'eo, Honua'ula, Maui, the members decided that Kaupena, a male, a carpenter, would build the church. So here we have the name of the carpenter or as well. Keawala'i Church would play a central role in bringing together the people of the area. And on a personal note, when I was growing up and spending my summers on Maui, it was the only space that I heard Hawaiian language spoken by those who spoke it as their mother tongue, their monaleo. And so in this space, it was the only place that I would hear Hawaiian language spoken regularly. And the hymns, or the church hymns, sung in Hawaiian language, or Olelo Hawaii. So just a little side note of these kipuka of Olelo Hawaii at a time when it was not common to hear the language. The other aspect to the 19th century was the Mahele'aina. And this is the action that brought lands or this idea of fee simple ownership of lands into fruition. So the Papaanui Ahupua'a boundary, as a part of the Mahele Aina, we needed to know where we were. We needed to know what Ahupua'a we were in. And so surveyors like E.D. Baldwin were tasked with identifying the boundaries of the Ahupua'a. So Makena region or Honuaula region can be a bit complicated in that a lot of the Ahupua'a boundaries were consolidated in favor of large land grants that were issued as a part of the Mahele. Land grants being land sold by the Hawaiian Kingdom in fee simple ownership to folks who applied for these grants. This is our project area. And as you can see, we don't really have Ahupua'a boundaries between Kalihi, Waipau, and Papaanui. These were all surveyed together in favor of Grant 234 to Torbert and Wilcox. Linton Torbert and William Slocum Wilcox purchased this large land grant from the kingdom. We do have a southern boundary for Papaanui that sometimes gets confused on the topographic map. On our topographic map, this plantation boundary, which is the limit of the Grant 234, sorry, that's a bad one. This is the plantation boundary. So this is the boundary for Grant 234. That is the boundary that that is often seen on the topographic maps, the USGS topo quads. However, this boundary is what I believe to be the true boundary between Papaanui and Ka'eo. And it is also poignant to note out that this boundary extends into the sea. At this point, to define the fishery of Ka'eo, who was in a dispute and the ownership of which was disputed. But this entire boundary extends out into the sea and the fishery of Ka'eo. Papaanui Ahupua'a is here in this area, okay? So to define Papaanui, we know that it extends to the sea at Ka'eo. And we also know that Papaanui is the one Ahupua'a of Honuaula that extends up to Haleakala and across to Pohaku Palaha, which is the central point where all of the moku of East Maui radiate from, okay? So Papaanui is what anchors Honuaula at Haleakala. At the time of the Mahele, Papaanui was first awarded to Lunalilo, who then returned it to the Crown, the lands of Papaanui then entering into the government land inventory, which is what paved the way for Torbert and Wilcox to purchase Grant 234. There were a total of 19 Kuleana claims, only 2 of which were awarded, and those were along the shoreline for house sites. So this here is the Pala Pala for Grant 234. And this here is one of the claims. We learn a lot from the native testimony to the Land Commission about land uses. So here Hiapo is saying that he has 2 sections of kalo at Papaanui. He also has a section of Uala Haole. And this is going to become very important to understand as we begin to see a shift in the agricultural landscape from traditional agriculture for subsistence and just for sustenance of self to commercial, right? So in and around the time of the Mahele, we have the commercialization of agriculture, Linton Torbert taking advantage of the soils of the region to help folks in the California area, gold rush, with their demand for sweet potatoes. So then we begin the era of the sweet potato gold rush. And this is a advertisement for Irish potatoes, to be called the finest Irish potatoes cultivated at Honu'ula. As you can remember, in the previous Kuleana testimony, we had Native tenants also cultivating uala haole, or Irish potato, and participating in this trade. We see a growing importance of the Makena Landing. Here it's referred to as Makee Landing. At one time it was known as Torbert's Landing, and today we know it as Makena Landing. This became pivotal in both bringing people to Makena as well as the export industry. And then also we see the beginning of ranching in this era and the development of Paniolo culture at Honu'ula.
Tanya, I'm just curious because of time.
Yeah,
the history is wonderful. I'm just wondering how much time you want to spend on the history back and how much on the archaeological discoveries that you folks have made.
Right. So we're almost there.
Okay. Very good. Very good.
So this is the backdrop. Papa'anui in the 20th century, we see a change, right? We know that the population decreases in the area and it becomes quiet again into the 20th century, in the early 20th century. And then toward the latter part of the 20th century, we see changes on the landscape again. And that is the development of the resort areas, the bringing in of Makena Alanui, and the region becoming more accessible in the modern era. So it is against this backdrop that we understand our archaeological findings. And so it's important to understand how all of this history interweaves so that we can interpret what we see on the ground very as best as we can. So again, it is against this backdrop that we find we understand the archaeology of this area. This aerial is a 1988 aerial that shows the initial construction of Makena Alanui. Here. And various degrees of previous disturbance from both ranching era as well as associated with the construction of the road. But intermingled into this in the areas that are not disturbed and in the areas that have not seen the blade of a bulldozer, we have the footprint of our kupuna. Yeah. And so we look at this landscape in the context of the traditional cultural landscape of our kupuna. And the archaeological record of this region of Papa'anui speaks especially clearly to the industrious people of Honu'ula, as reflected in the agricultural complex of this region. And as previously noted, were referred to collectively as the Makena field system. So this is an example of one of the agricultural complexes that we documented during the course of our work. And this is the overall archaeological landscape that we were privileged to be able to learn about here. The areas shaded in green are agricultural and habitation areas. The areas shaded in brown we've interpreted them as primarily house sites or living areas. And the areas shaded in red are ceremonial features. So as as we noted before, we have this integrated community, shoreline community, still reflected on the landscape today. So one of the key features of what was earlier described as the Makena field system is the ability of our kupuna to understand the topography of the area and utilize the contours of the most of the fertile knolls and the ridges in order to be successful with agricultural pursuits like sweet potato agriculture. You can see at the bottom here, very clear contouring of the slope sides. Key to this were for the top of the knolls, we have our habitation areas, the field houses or the field habitation areas, and below those habitation areas would be contoured with these agricultural terraces, nooks, pits, and various types of agricultural features. So again, here we have what we've interpreted as a habitation terrace here. And in this spot here is an overhang, so a sheltered area. And below it, we have these agricultural terraces. And same here, what we've interpreted as terracing likely associated with agriculture here and in here as well. So this photograph showing the landscape that is mapped for the bottom here. Along this, with our agricultural landscape, we have ceremonial sites and spaces. This space in here, in the circle, is this space in here. And in this space, we noted that tucked into these voids within the bedrock and places that were built up to create cupboard-like spaces, we see items like coral heads tucked into these spaces, into these alcoves. Very significant ceremonial site toward the top of Papa'anui Ridge here, with a beautiful site toward Pu'uola'i. So again, these integrated spaces of ceremony and worship integrated into the agricultural landscape and the habitation landscape of our kupuna, the footprint of our kupuna. Along with prominent features like that, we also have ko'a. This ko'a here, such as this ko'a here. This was well mapped before. What we did add to this were the limits of a very intense and an intensive and dense coral scatter that was around the structure of this site. Coral, we know, is often used as an offering or in offering at shrine sites like this. Along with our structural sites, we were able to identify and document formal artifacts associated with stoneworking, fishing, woodworking. This here is a section of finished adze or axe-like implement that was used for woodworking and for felling trees. This is a file made of the pencil urchin spine, often used in woodworking as well as fish hook manufacture.
Were these all found on the site there? Were these all found in the area?
These were all found in the area and at the various sites. So as a part of this, we were able to point plot, and given, again, because we had the time, we were able to point plot each artifact on the site maps that are in the report. And then this lure or sinker weight was also identified on the further supporting the use of that in relation to fishing ceremonies. Right. So in addition to our wahi kupuna, our kupuna land, the footprint of our kupuna prior to 1778, interwoven with that, we also have the footprint of the 19th and 20th century in the ranching features or delineation of the ranch paddocks, the Ulupalakua to Makena Road that a lot of our kupuna today remember and speak fondly of going to school, as well as other features related to what we think might be commerce. One of the most interesting features that we came across, or that was recorded in greater detail, was a historic cart road, what we believe to be a historic cart road. This was also documented as a part of the supplemental report from the prior surveys. Because we were given the time, we were able to do a little bit more in-depth documentation and take a look at where this road, this historic road, is in relation to the overall landscape. So here you see a section of the roadbed. It was a raised cart roadbed, and the support stones along the side, either side of that raised roadbed. When we do some GIS looking at historic maps, it's not perfect, but the relationship of the cart road here to the road from Malka down to the Makena landing here is quite compelling. This here is the current Makena Ulupalakua alignment, and this space in here was a grant to Torbert to build a new road, right? So we understand this area or this feature to be associated with this road here. And that was pretty cool. We thought that was still there. Wall alignments and the Aupuni wall. We wanted to take a look at where there are several notable and well-constructed walls within the area that we looked at. And we wanted to understand whether or not they may or may not be related to the Aupuni wall as depicted in a sketch of Ulupalakua Makena by Linton Torbert. What we do see is that the Aupuni wall in this region appears to extend further Malka of the walls that we had initially thought may be reflective of that Aupuni wall. Even considering sort of the GIS errors, the distance between the two are pretty great. And so in this section, while this may be an early delineation by the government, it doesn't appear to be the extent of the Aupuni wall in this region as depicted in the Linton Torbert sketch.
Let me interrupt for a second. How much more do you have? Because I would like to leave time for questions and comments by other panelists as well. How much time do you need?
Maybe 2 minutes.
Please go. by all
zoom
means.
through it and wrap it up.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Then we'll have
Okay.
some questions. Good.
Yeah, I tell you, it could go fast or I get carried away.
It's been excellent so far.
Yeah. So we also see the 19th and 20th century footprint at Papanui in the modernization of Makena. So what is so significant about a telephone line, right? We were able to document the first telephone line and the early efforts at modernization in Makena. So we, in speaking with Uncle Eddie Boy Chang and looking at the dates associated with these insulators, we looked at this telephone line as, yes, this looks like the telephone line that Uncle Eddie Boy was talking about that was installed around 1930. Beginning the modernization of Makena. And then, of course, the later Makena Ulupalako Road. What is interesting about a road? There's a lot of things interesting about a road like this. One, it carried my mom and her brother to school up in Ulupalako from Makena. And there's a lot to learn about the different stages of construction. So we took a closer look and noted the cinder stage of construction as well as the later asphalt stage of construction. And then, of course, we have the ranching landscape as reflected in this aina. So the interweaving of these things and the ranching landscape as well, utilizing both older wall segments and reinforcing with these kiave tree posts that you don't see too often anymore along the ranching landscape. So that is my presentation. Mahalo for your patience.
Excellent. Let me ask you the first question, and then I'm going to open it up to some of the panelists as well. How long did the current study of the Makena landing area take, and what was the most surprising new discoveries from these Makena lands and studies that you done?
It took a while. So we had the privilege of time, and as well as support for clearing, and patience with our method. So it took about a year to complete the documentation of just this one region. We're continuing to work, so we are in our second year of work out in the area. The most surprising find was the extent of the historic cart road. I had known about it from before, but I did not know entirely about the condition, the preserved state of that cart road. The fact that it survived along the lower region in a low-lying area where there had been so much activity prior to that, and the connectivity, and to be able to bring it up against the GIS map, the historic map through GIS, and further understand our landscape in that way. It was neat, it was surprising, and it was fascinating.
Wonderful. Let's allow some of the other panelists. Maybe you can get rid of your share screen, and we'll have the other panelists come up now. Rob, can you help us on that? Maybe you can stop share screen. There we go. And very good. Okay. Let me change my view here. 1 second. Where are we? Okay. We have some other speakers, and I'd like to introduce them here. Many of you already know these people. Lucienne Naie is representing Maui Tomorrow. She's written a book on Makena several years ago, a large book, and has done a lot of study on the area, and has been very active in a whole number of environmental issues on Maui. Ashford de Lima is a lineal descendant, and he represents Ho'oponopono, and we'll be giving some perspective from that organization's point of view. Claire Apana is a member of the Sierra Club and will be representing their perspective. And finally, do we have Kaniloa? Kaniloa, did he come? I don't believe so. Oh, Kaniloa is there as well. And Kaniloa Kamaunu is a Waihe resident, and he represents the Ahumoku Council of Wailuku, and is interested in water relationships to this whole development that's taking place in the Makena area. I'd like to ask each of you to unmute yourselves now at this stage. And I'll give you a few questions, and then we'll try to get some from the general public. Why did the various citizen groups ask for additional archaeological work to be done on the Makena lands? I'll let any of the panelists want to go with that. Ashford, let me start with you. Why did your group ask for all this archaeological work to be done?
I'm Ashford Kaleolani Dilema. I'm president of Ho'oponopono Makena. And the reason why I went there to look at the historical sites is because the close relationship to that land where we live, our family home is. And that was our fishing ground, my father and my grandfather. So I wanted to know and see what they're going to put up there and how we can save all the historical sites. And that's the reason why I'm here.
Very good. And what was it that you wanted to learn about this property by doing the archaeological work?
Well, for one thing is I knew there was a fishing shrine and fishing heiau there. And then Lucienne showed me where it's at. And it's real close to the ocean. And I can see why the relationship there is for fishing. And I started fishing with my dad when I was 3 years old. So I continue to do that today. And I'm happy to be here to save and all the historical sites in Makena and Honolulu.
Lucienne, you've done a lot of work in this area. What did you hope to learn from the intensive archaeological work?
Well, you know, a group of folks back in, I think it was 2015, 2016, started going out on this land, and they were seeing things. They didn't have the benefit of looking at archaeological studies like I did, but they were seeing things that they felt were very important. And at some point, they contacted me because of the book I had written with Teresa Donham. And Teresa did the appendix that covered the archaeological summaries of all the different archaeology in the whole Honolulu area, and did some great new maps. And these young people found this very useful. And we met up. And when I saw what they were finding, I said, well, you know, some of these things they're not registered in this report. They'd never seen the report. And so they got excited and they said, there's so much more here. And then every person who went on the land saw more things than were in the actual, you know, official report at that time. This was 2015, 2016. This report got accepted in 2016. So when the matter came up for permits, I couldn't just sit by the side, nor could, you know, the 50 people that came to the hearings. They couldn't just sit there and say, there's nothing else here. They had to say there's a lot more here. And fortunately, 3 groups were willing to put their necks on the line and say, we're not accepting this. We're getting a lawyer. We're asking for there to be better archaeological review, among other things. There were a number of other things that people felt needed to be changed in the project. And so that was the evolution. And I think for the first time, people insisted that particular archaeologists be involved who had a very good track record. And I think Claire can speak to that.
Yeah. I was going to ask Claire, could you unmute yourself and show your video if possible? Claire Pana. Let's see.
Is that doing it?
No, I got you. Okay, we can hear you now. Can we see you?
I don't know.
Well, if we can't see you, I'd like to hear from you.
Okay, sorry about that. I can't find the cursor.
Okay.
Thank you.
How do you feel about the new archaeological sites that have been found here? And you know, you represent Sierra Club. What do you think that means?
I think that was very exciting. Tanya's presentation was really exciting in that we are always asking to hear about the connectivity of the land, the real story of the land. And I think she's come the closest that I've seen. And it is always so painful to think about these places that we grew up with and visited as say from children to now, and to think of them being developed into a place that we would never be able to go again, or not be welcomed into the gate. And so to increase how much can be preserved for the people, for just regular people like myself, who's never going to own a home in this particular subdivision, is so important. And at the same time is so painful that to think that it's going to be developed. So just about the archaeology, part of the lawsuit with Sierra Club was to ask for a change in archaeologists, because we felt that the archaeology that had been done was not up to par and was not representative of what would be adequate to preserve this land. And so I remember sitting down with the representatives of the developers and them telling us who they were going to be using, and saying, and being so upset and saying, no way, you're not using that person, no way. And without thinking of what I was asking for, but they said, well, who would you use? I said, well, you have people on Maui. You could use Tanya Gregg, who's also from there. And we had Teresa Donham, who had written the book, co-authored the book with Lucienne Naie about this area. And so I think that getting the appropriate people in, the people who can do the work, who can walk out there, who can do the archaeology and find what is still there in the land, was so important. And I was, for myself, I was surprised that we were able to ask that. And I am today very happy to know that we did do that, and we were able to get an archaeologist who could make the story of the people come alive. Thank you, Dick.
Very good. And Kaniloa, you disappeared on me. Kaniloa, you're all the way from the other side of the island, from the Wailuku Ahumoku Council, and you, I know, had some concerns regarding water. Could you tell us what they are in relationship to Makena?
Okay, I'd like to thank Tanya for her update on their findings. And just to kind of give a background, I mean, I've, as a young man, have frequent Makena for many years, and I'm kind of sad to see all the development, because one of the elements that isn't talked about is back in the day when we used to go there at night, you could see the whole sky and all the constellations. And that's kind of lost in that area today. I think that was a feature that was really unique. We used to go camping a lot out there, so it's sad to say that gets kind of missing with all the lights and stuff. But with our concern on this side, being that there are quite a bit of projects that are coming up in the south, on the south end of Maui, and being that this area really doesn't have its own water source. And, everybody knows that the majority of the water for Central, as well as out to the south end, comes from the Valleja. So, with so many more projects coming up as this, it just weighs in on the use of the water. And you have to realize that it's an infinite, if I'm saying the right word, resource where, we can't create it. It is what it is, depending on the area to produce the water, the rainfall and everything else, as well as aquifer. So it becomes trying, because the water is taken from here to be able to be delivered to all these different developments, which are huge developments, and which take away water for, as we could see in the summer, there were actually, I believe, 2 times this year that there were water shortages. A couple due to the pumps, but a couple was due to shortage of water. And so, I'm concerned about the water use that goes out into the area.
Very good. Thank you. Yeah, I'm sure that at some point we're going to need to have more exploration of what happens to Waihee and central Maui if water is continually shifted down to Kihei as well as down, all the way down to Makena. Question I have, Tanya, are you still with us? I see you're no longer video, but if you could unmute yourself. I have a couple of questions that came in from the general public. Tanya? Could you unmute? Thank you. The question that came in from the public is, the material that you're developing, is that going to be available on the web, and how will the general public be able to better understand? We had a snapshot really of all the extensive work you've done, and I know there's a lot more. And I mean, I'm not sure you're going to wait till the whole thing is done and all your final report. Is there stuff going to be available that people maybe can work along with you and give their input as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so all of the reports will end up at the State Historic Preservation Division. My understanding also is that as a part of the development, there'll be a culture and heritage center. And so the materials will also be housed there, and hopefully we can return the materials to Makena, the cultural material that we've collected to Makena as well. And as we move forward and continue to work our way down toward the south and one more to the north, hopefully we can do more of these public presentations if it's of interest to folks. So that's one thing we can do as well. Is
there any way of setting up down the road any kind of the equivalent of a museum, but maybe a living museum really of the various sites, so they can be educational? We have kids growing up here on Maui who want to know about the history of the community, and this might be a living museum of some kind.
Right. So the majority of the sites in this area are being set aside for preservation in one continuous cultural preserve. So that landscape that was put up early on, the majority of that, including all of the ceremonial sites and features and the agricultural complexes, are being set aside for preservation in one continuous landscape.
Yeah, I've heard that the developer now no longer will be building all of those big condominium buildings and has reduced the number of units on the project. And so there'll be much more space available, I hope, and less intensive use of the lands in the future. Have you participated in any of those discussions?
I have participated in those, and trying to figure out how the two can coexist. If that's what's going to happen, they need to coexist. Another sort of phase of life of Makena, as well as all of the efforts of the Sierra Club, Maui Tomorrow, and Ho'oponopono Makena, and their input in this as well. And they're very adamant about preservation of landscapes. Very helpful in in this effort as well.
Yeah, I had one technical question. It says, is the cart trail connected to the Ho'apili Trail?
Not in this area. So the cart trail is Mauka to Makai. My understanding of Ho'apili Trail and the earlier Alaloa, that would have followed the Makena Keonio route or alignment, which is now the Old Makena Road, right? So the early Kings Trail would have followed along that coastal route.
Okay,
Dick, can I jump in about
please.
the posting of the documents and so forth?
Yes, please.
These are public documents, and I believe the three organizations have a real commitment to post these documents in an accessible form on our respective websites. Perhaps there'll even be a special section that is created because there's a tremendous amount of wonderful information in just the two documents we've seen, the AIS and the preservation plan. Both have gone into great depths. Also, there will be a cultural manager. This is part of the settlement that the three organizations agreed to. There will be a cultural manager on the land. There will be use of the land for educational and cultural purposes. On the one parcel that we're looking at tonight, the 18 acres, that's the furthest north section of the 47 acres that got its permits back in 2017. That 18 acres will have a 7-acre preserve for cultural sites. And so that area, we are really feeling very strongly and working with the Makena Resort folks that there's meaningful public access there, that there will be some version of the old Makena Ulapalakua road that will be available Mauka Makai all the way up as far as the Makena property for pedestrian access. It won't be drivable, and that in the next parcel south, there will be a restoration of the Aupuni Road that existed on those old maps we saw. The cart trail, it would be great to see that, fully extended across the highway and see if it still exists in a form, because the rest of the Makena lands will have updated archeological studies as well. They're not going to just sit on the past. That's part of the whole discussion with citizen groups and the folks that own the Makena Resort now, is that things really need to be on the highest level, because it is a very, very special place. And the work that Tanya and her colleagues have done show that there was much more there than people ever thought. There's some very unique features, like all these little shrines with the coral in them. I've never seen anything like concentrated like that in one landscape, but there's about 5 places that have these special little shrines set up. And so there's meanings we have yet to discover. There's stories that have yet to come forward. And so this has to be a place, like Claire says, that's available for the people. And I know, Ashford, you're shy about, sharing your mana'o, but I know you have such strong feelings when you visit there, and there are things that are important for you to see continue. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. There's another thing that I came across, which relating to fishing and sailing, is the path to Tahiti. And I found this rock that looks like a huge nalu. Nalu means wave. And I lined that up with a rock on the ocean and lined it up with a North Star. And that's the path to Tahiti. And then we discovered that, and it's going to be preserved. And
Excellent.
also, there's another thing that I want to touch about, is that the fishing heiau. The fishing heiau is a very sacred place, and we found some features there that I haven't seen for years, and that was used for fishing for the he'e, which Tanya showed a rock like that. But normally they have this big shell that is shaped like the rock, and they put some wires on it and attach it and put it down into the water, and the hay would grab onto it, and that's how you pick up the line, and you have your hay for the night. So I thought that was a very unique um, area, which is kitty corner to our ohana in Makena. Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, we're getting close to the end right now. We got a few minutes left. Just want to ask each of you, do you have any final comments, things that you think the public would want to know as to where we have gone already and where we should be going in the future, will be going in the future? I'll go around the circle. Claire, please. Unmute.
Claire, you're muted. Can you unmute?
She's trying
Yeah.
hard. I'll let Lucienne go first, then Claire will find the unmute button. Good. Lucienne?
Well, I just want to point out that this project told the planning commission that they were going to have 152 units on the property and all these, tall buildings that were blocking the view. And now it's a much more sensible size. Basically, it's, I think about half that or much less. And there's no tall buildings. And there were only going to be a handful of sites preserved of the whole area. The parcel that Tanya just worked on was only going to have 3 sites preserved. Now there's 14 site complexes preserved. So Makena's history has really benefited from citizens getting involved. So, and getting good archaeologists to do some work there.
Claire, any final comments?
Yes, thank you. I just want to say that this is, I'm glad to be part of this, because it is the only thing I see that is trying to preserve and keep the development from being entirely something that is out of Maui, that is not going to involve anything from Maui. And although the work that has been done has been so great at pretty much increasing how much is to be preserved and the entire story, when I look at the map, I know it's a lot more preserved, but it still breaks my heart to see all of those big mansion houses and condominiums that really we always felt would never ever be there. Just to say that it is not about helping a place that we love and cherish to be gone, but doing whatever can be done to save what can be saved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Ashford, any?
Yeah, I'll piggyback what Claire Apana just said. And my